you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast, the hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
I'm Moses Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the big show. We certainly appreciate you guys being here. As always, we bring in the most smartest people, the most brilliant minds, the CEOs, the billionaires, the White House presidential advisors, the astronauts, the, what else has been on the show? The rock stars, you name it. Everyone's been on the show except for, I don't know. Everyone's been on the show. Just whatever. There's not been everyone. We don't have room or bandwidth for that. We'd have to pay extra. So we kind of cut some people off on the show and we don't invite them. So that's, I don't know. It sounded funny in my head. I just rolled with it. Anyway, we have an amazing young lady on the show with us today. She'll be talking to us about her newest book that will be coming out May 7th, 2024. It's called Mathish: Finding Creativity, Diversity, and Meaning in Mathematics. Jo Boaler is on the show with us today. She'll be talking to us about her insights in her new book. She is a Stanford University professor and co-founder of U-Cubed and Strugly. She's formerly the Madame Curie Professor of Mathematics Education for England. I've heard of that place. A mathematics teacher in London, comprehensive schools, and a researcher at King's College in London. She's the author of 18 books, and the most recent being the latest one we're talking about today. And she was listed at one of the 8 educators changing the face of education by the BBC. Welcome to the show, Jo. How are you?
Great. Thanks, Chris. And thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you for coming. We certainly appreciate 18 books under your belt. That's awesome. And
actually, this is number 19.
Oh, 19.
But it's not technically out yet. But
maybe that's why they have that number. And numbers are important. That's why you're counting them, because you're all about math. So give us any .coms. Where do you want people to look you up on the interwebs?
Yeah. ucubed.org is our website with lots and lots and lots of resources for educators, parents, children. My new book is on a website called mathish.org.
There you go.
Both of those places are good.
There you go. Give us a 30,000 overview of your new book.
My new book is a passionate plea to stop what I call narrow maths in classrooms, where kids are sitting watching teachers go through methods and then going through lots of methods in their books. Mm-hmm. We can do a lot better than that. We know ways of really engaging kids and making them really enjoy their learning. So in the book, I do a few things. One is I share the neuroscience. I work with neuroscientists at Stanford about how important it is for us to struggle and how good that is for our brains. And then I talk about how maths can be this beautiful, visual, creative subject with lots of examples. And I introduce the concept of ish, which is a new idea, mathish. So I can tell you more about that if you want.
Please do. I was going to ask you, what is the origin of the title?
Yeah, mathish. So this came to me actually when I was swimming. I love to swim in the mornings. Mm-hmm. But I make an argument in the book that in the world, when we answer questions, they're nearly always ish numbers that we use. Mm-hmm. So, for example, we might say, how much of the moon can we see? Or how long is it till we get to the airport? Or how much did it rain last night? Or how much paint do I need to paint the wall? Or I could go on and on and on. And they're ish answers. But in maths classrooms, it's all about precision. All precision. And precise is good, it's important, but we're really out of balance. And so what I'm suggesting to teachers, a lot of people will say to me, oh, kids get lost inside the calculations. They come up with these wild answers. And what I suggest is, before you ever do a calculation, and this is true for us in the world too, you should come up with an ish answer. Now, when that happens, when you're thinking in an ish way, your brain is staying at the bigger concept of the number. You're not getting lost inside the details. You're really thinking conceptually. So I'm very excited because some teachers have been trying it in classrooms and telling me that it's been really amazing.
Wow. So it's not like you're trying to guess the exact number. You're kind of like trying to get somewhere in the vicinity.
Yeah. So what would be a reasonable answer? What would be your ish answer? There's an example I give in the book. I could share it maybe, where in a big national assessment, kids were asked to come up with an approximate answer to 12/13 plus 7/8. So that's two fractions, 12/13, 7/8, but they're both close to 1. And they were given a choice of answers, 1 to 19 or 21. Mm-hmm. So the majority of 17-year-olds in the US chose 19. Now, that's so far out of what those two fractions are. And I know why they choose 19. They jump in and think, oh, I have to add the numerators and add the denominators, and they're rules in their heads. And they're not thinking, about what the ish answer would be. And probably they've never had any experience of thinking what the ish answer should be.
That sounds like American kids for sure, yeah.
And lots of others, but it's true. I was
hoping you were going to tell me the British kids did better in London there.
I think we do it a little bit better, but not enough better.
Shots fired, folks. It's a new revolution. I don't know what to say about what the kids thought. So can I start walking around going 2 plus 2 is 5? Can I start doing that now? 5-ish? If I ish it becomes...
There are situations in life where coming up with 5 would work for you, but it's more, maybe you have to multiply 125 times 8. And it would help you to think, what's the ish kind of answer that would be. Mm-hmm. And maybe you think of 120 times 10 instead, because that's an easier calculation.
Yeah, what I just did, it's 1,000, isn't it? Around-ish. I just basically took 125 times 2 times 4.
That's great. So you worked out a precise. That's a precise answer. Yeah. And that's good. And that probably means you have pretty good number sense. But a lot of our kids don't have good number sense, and they'll say, 125 times 8, and they'll say maybe it's 1,600, 200, and 26. So having them think about the ish answer first, it's a little safety mechanism as well. It stops them, as well as having them think conceptually. Anyway, in the book, I also talk about how you can ish a lot of things in life, actually. It's not just numbers. And when you take an ish perspective, maybe you don't have to be perfect all the time. Maybe your efforts are good enough. It can be pretty liberating, I think.
There you go. Can you give us an example of that in life?
I think a lot of time in life, people strive towards perfection. And there are people who think they have to do things perfectly. When actually we didn't think we had to do things perfectly. So what would be a good example of that? I don't know, maybe I run a business and I'm trying to get people in a company to all interact in a certain way. Maybe I'm putting out some new policies, and then I really beat myself up because I didn't explain it really well, and 3 of the people aren't doing it really well. But instead I could think, it was good enough. I can sort of get an ish result from this.
You get close. I like the idea because you see the game I just played in my head, which I think fits with what your format is in the book. When I was taught math, there were beatings and gnashing of teeth and crunching of fingers, and if you didn't get the thing right, it was a very exact science. It was there was a very, I don't know if linear is the right word, but there was you had to solve the math in this way.
Yep.
And one of the
this answer in this way.
Yeah. And they would teach you, like, for multiplication, there was a way to do that, and then for addition there was a way to do that. But when you start getting addition's not too bad, until you start carrying stuff, 1 or 2 over there, and then you got to carry again. But the multiplication usually would gets a little funky on you because it exponents, and it can. And
then you get to division.
Yeah, and division too. And so what I was always, cram that down my throat from that age, and I flunked most of my math. I mean, I was horrible at math. I hated math. and I flunked a lot of it. But what's interesting is somewhere I developed a pattern just out of, I don't know, necessity in running companies, because I had to do math, of doing that little game that I just played in my head. And then in recent decades, I noticed math teachers teaching this other variation of ways to package the math. And what you've talked about, where, like what I did in my head, I went 125. If I still just try and do 125 times 8, my brain kind of starts breaking gears. And I was like, but if I break it down to something that I'm simple at exponenting, 250, I can go, okay, well, cut that in half, go 4, go 250, that's 1,000.
250 times 4, perfect.
Yeah. And I did it pretty fast in my head.
Yeah.
But
it is one of the methods we teach kids, and I talk about in the book.
Yeah. And so I saw a lot of math people over recent decades, and sadly they weren't there when why weren't you guys in my high school? Sadly they weren't there, but different ways of learning to package these things and learn them. And I don't know if maybe I have a different brain because I package things that way, or if I've just figured out, a side way of doing things, or what you would call mathish. But it's always worked for me in being able to kind of create a bite-size element or something. 250 is really easy because you can break it down into stuff. 125, if I still try and do 125 times 8, I can feel my brain just go, what the hell are you doing, dude? I don't know. Write it down.
Yeah. I mean, one of the other big messages in the book, aside of mathish, is valuing the different ways kids think. So we do something that I talk about in the book that's called number talks, and you just sort of did a number talk right there, where we would say to kids 125 times 8, and in your head think about how you would do that. And what you find is kids use all sorts of different ways of doing it.
Wow.
So somebody might say, I thought about 250 times 4, fantastic. Or they might have thought, I'll do 120 times 8 plus 5 times 8. Or so what you do is you collect in kids' different ways.
Really? Wow.
And then, really importantly, visualize them. So I can draw a picture of what 125 times 8 could be and what 250 times 4 would look like. Because multiplication is always just area. So 125 times 8 could be a rectangle. And we could look at that rectangle and the 250 times 4 rectangle. They would be the same. They would have the same area. So it becomes becomes kind of a beautiful visual display of different ways of thinking about it, different visuals. And we really acknowledge the different ways kids think. Super valuable, instead of it being, there's one way and you must follow that one way. And your thinking is not a part of it.
A lot of people, that was the way they forced it on us when we were young, where they just crammed in our brain, like, you have to do it this way.
And you get it wrong if you don't do it the same way as the teacher.
And for some people, like we're talking about, it just doesn't, we have different ways where it could be repackaged.
Think differently, people
and
think
you have people that are I don't know, does math affect people that are dyslexic?
It can do. And my daughter has dyslexia, and kids with dyslexia, I mean, the whole approach that we recommend that's on our YouTube website is to see maths visually and to experience it in different ways through building things, drawing things, writing in words. So that multidimensional approach helps kids with all types of special needs, because they often need different ways to grab onto ideas. And I think what is hard for kids with dyslexia is that one procedural method that you have to follow.
Yeah. And if you're dyslexic, you're switching the 2 and the 6 or whatever. I'm assuming that's how it works, but I know that there's number switching. Sometimes I wonder if I have mild, because I'll do that. I'll read lines and mix stuff. So I'm not sure, but the visual approach to math makes much better difference. One of the challenges that I had with math in high school was, why should I care? They give you a bunch of numbers on a page.
Why should you?
And I'm just like, I feel like I'm just jumping through some hoops for some stupid numbers. Like, why does this apply? Now, when I started my first company at 18, math became really important because you have to do accounting, you have to do taxes, and you have to figure out if you're making a profit or a loss. And then numbers and math became really important to me.
And then you're motivated to
then you're motivated
think
to
about
understand
them.
it. Yeah.
I was in a high school just last week, Chris, and the teacher said, today we're going to do systems of equations, and then gave the kids all these abstract systems of equations. And they were doing them, they were standing up, which is, a new thing in education. They were standing up at boards, but they had in front of them things like x plus 6y equals 4, 3x plus 7y equals 10. And so I walked around the room, and these kids are all just staring at these systems of equations. And I was talking to them saying, what do you think? How do you think you can approach it? And they were like, don't know. And I thought to myself, why should these 13, 14-year-olds care about the answer to that question? Now, what you could do, and I talk about this in the book, is give them a data set of ospreys and fish. They actually exist in the universe in systems of equations. Like if you have too many fish, one dies out. If you have too many osprey, the fish die out, and then the osprey die. Anyway, it's a really interesting kind of data investigation. They would have cared about that. But unfortunately, there are great teachers who are giving those kind of investigations. Yeah. But still too many classrooms are just kids working through abstract algebra, abstract number problems, no visuals, no modeling.
Maybe you need to go to where they're at. So basically just say, how many Instagram followers do you have to get a certain number of likes and DMs?
Exactly. I work with a great teacher, actually. Her name's Diara Busso, and she did exactly that. She said to the kids, where do you hang out on social media? And Instagram was the place. And she said, okay, I'm going to start sending you maths homework through Instagram.
There you go.
And I'm going to send you choices of problems, and you can which ones you want to do. And of course, the kids were instantly into this. Again, a very rare teacher, though.
Yeah. If you take all the songs by crap, her name just slipped my thing. Who's the big famous
Taylor Swift?
Taylor Swift. There you go. If you take all the songs by Taylor Swift and divide by number of albums, and something like that, or how many words are in each song, or I don't know.
Or actually, we have a data science course on our website, and one of the units is investigating how Spotify recommends music to you. What does it use to figure out what music to recommend to you? And kids love that investigation too. So it's not hard, really, to make maths exciting and engaging for kids, but it's still pretty rarely done.
Yeah. You could be like, if a Kardashian gets a butt lift, what's the circumference of? Never mind, I'm just doing jokes.
That could be very dodgy. But
there's a lot of people watch the show. If you're watching The Bachelor, what are the odds that he's going to go with the blonde one? I don't know, but if someone can figure that out, they can probably make some money in Vegas.
That's true too. Yes.
There you go. What is the chance of the Browns ever winning a Super Bowl in the next 100 years? There you go. You can take that to the Vegas.
Loads of sport. Oh my gosh, the amount of data inside sports these days.
Oh yeah,
is incredible, and kids would be really fascinated by looking into that more.
Yeah, we've had people on the show that are now using AI to take all that data in, and then to spit out different answers, and they're using AI to do the sports betting, and evidently they're doing really well, they claim. Yeah, I haven't seen it firsthand, but we've had people on the show talking about it. So what are some other aspects of your book that can help us become more mathish?
I start the book with a chapter that's called Learning to Learn. And there's a lot in there that I think is good, not just for students, but for people in life. Because, in classrooms, maths teachers think they're there to teach maths. And they don't stop to think, maybe these kids don't know how to learn maths, like how to approach it. I teach a course at Stanford to undergrads called How to Learn Maths. And it's super popular. And I teach them how to approach problems. So in my book, I talk about how we have to help people learn to learn. And this is, really good for us in life as well. So there's a lot of research that says being metacognitive will help you in life, in learning. And a lot of people think metacognition is thinking about your own thinking, but it's a lot more than that. It's actually also being able to strategize when you're given a problem and having some different strategies to use. And it's about the ways you think about approaching your learning. All of these, it happens in a certain part of the brain. And metacognitive people, they tend to be better problem solvers. They also tend to be people who are open to more diverse perspectives. That's something that's kind of important for our world right now. So teaching people to take control of their own brain, teaching them how to think, turns out to be super important.
Yeah.
You know, I spend time on that in the book. How would we help kids know what they should do when a maths problem is placed in front of them? A lot of people think you're successful if you know how to do the maths. But actually, what's more important is that you know kind of strategies and approaches to the problem.
Yeah, how to do it. One thing I always find interesting is I like averages. I have a weird brain that I actually count stuff. It's part of my ADHD disease where I count and categorize things. And evidently, I was told by a psychologist once that if I wasn't doing it for a business application, they'd have me committed when my ADHD was really bad. But I do it mostly for business, so I count things. I count like marketing billboards for advertising or ads for advertising and monitor whether, I wonder if those are successful, if that's working. And sometimes I'll look at, if there's a lot of them, clearly that ad's working for them.
You're actually doing data science right there.
Yeah. Is that what it is? Yeah. So I'll count those and I'll track things. And I always did. I'll try and track trends.
That's super important.
Sometimes I'm kind of following them without really following them. I'm watching stuff and I'm like, wow, it's how I got into Twitter when it first came out, back when social media launched. I just kept hearing about Twitter.
Right.
And I was keeping a number in my head where I'm like, hearing about this everywhere. And then Oprah started talking about it. And I'm like, geez, if Oprah started talking about it, I guess here we are.
Better catch up on it.
And that's how I've caught a lot of trends, is just kind of keeping the thing. And it used to be that way with my office. I could literally walk around my office in a month and know where my sales were. And just by listening, looking at the board, but also listening to what my salespeople were doing, how they were doing, touching base with them, I would know. But one thing that's been interesting to me is I'll take averages. So I'll be like, the average of where we should be is right about here. Right. A lot of people don't seem to understand averages nowadays. If I ask somebody the average of something, they just lose all ability to function.
Yeah, it's true. Same as many people can't use fractions or work out percentages. And, I love your approach, by the way. It's definitely something that's very mathematical. And seeking patterns is one of the things we teach kids, that maths is really all about. That is finding patterns in the ways things work. But I think there's way too much in the maths curriculum in schools. So teachers end up giving kids a very shallow experience of lots and lots of things, and they come away not remembering any of it. So really important concepts like finding an average or finding a percentage, any sort of proportion, is fractions of proportions too, are important in the world. And a lot of people run away from them and feel they can't do them. If we could slim out what was in the curriculum and really go in more depth, which is what they do in more successful countries like Japan and China, we would be much more successful, I think. Yeah.
I mean, the visual aspect of what you talk about in your book is really important. And why does this apply to me? What is the use case here? One thing I felt when I was in the prison of high school, I just felt like, why do I need to care about algebra? Really?
Yeah. Why?
Like whatever. And it was so hurtful. And honestly, and I don't want to sound like a victim here, but it was so hurtful to my self-esteem. It made me feel, because I couldn't master algebra. And I think I kind of could, but I just didn't care.
Yeah.
And then the fact that I was forced to take it in school, it was so destructive to my self-esteem, my confidence, my desire to learn. Like, I'm just huck all this stuff in the trash is how I felt in high school.
Maths has this power to really crush kids' self-confidence. because we really give the idea that maths is really important, and if that's what it means to be intelligent is to do all this maths, and then if you don't, then that must mean there's something wrong with you. And kids really do end up feeling, well, the way you describe, really kind of crushed by it. And that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about getting the ideas for change out.
Yeah.
A lot of people see that I really get attacked by the traditional math people who want to keep everything the same. And they say to me, how can you keep going? And I say, I keep going because it's so important. There are so many kids out there who are exactly like you, who just don't see the point of doing what they're doing. And it makes them feel lesser as people.
Yeah. And if someone had sat down with me and said, if a CEO would come into the classroom, or, accountants are kind of boring. Sorry, accountants. But if a CEO would come into the classroom and said, hey, let me tell you about why math's important and how I became Elon Musk or whatever. And to me, like I said, I started my first company at 18. And so I had to kind of learn math. And fortunately, I learned the basics. I didn't, you don't use algebra much in business unless you're doing engineering, and I'm not an engineer. But I'm just an idiot CEO who tells engineers what to do. But, if I would have seen that, I would have been like, oh, okay, so this is why this is important, and I could see that math was important to people who are like engineers or science sort of people. But I could see that I was never going to be an engineer. Number one, I didn't like pocket protectors. Number two, I really liked women and dating women. No, I'm just kidding. Engineers, you guys are wonderful. But serious, get out more. And so I just didn't see a future in it for me. I'm like, I'm not sending rockets into space. I mean, I chewed on way too many lead paint chips when I was a kid. We lived near power lines too, so there was that. And I'm just doing jokes, but I think
we have that in our system too. We've sort of the way maths is organized in schools. It's sort of saying, let's assume that you're going to be an engineer and you need calculus, and then go down from there, making all the courses fit in that pathway. Yeah. So like in school now, we have all students must take Algebra 2, which is a course of very complex algebra. And most kids will never use that in their lives.
And they tried forcing that on us too in my age. You had to do Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. And I just flunked the F out of it.
But, one of our proposals, and we've been working on as a sort of national group that's going on across the country now, is that kids can take a course in data science instead of Algebra 2. And kids are loving the course in data science. It's real things in the world. They're learning how to model and develop functions, and it's important maths. It's not that it's like an easy low-level course. It's just it's applied. It's a math modeling course. And lots of districts have said now kids can do that, but we're experiencing a big pushback of traditional maths people saying, no, everybody must go through Algebra 2. We're not having data science as an alternative. Wow. So these battles have raged, in the US for decades, but that's the current one that's going. Should it be okay for kids to take data science instead of Algebra 2? And then maybe they take statistics after that. So they don't go that calculus route. They take more of a statsy route. I think
if they take statistics, they'll learn averages.
But not, some people are saying they don't want that.
Yeah, they have that old world thinking. I like the idea of doing statistics because I've always studied statistics. I love those types of numbers. When it comes to like voting or polling, or I'll do polling of stuff on ideas I have with staff or something. Yeah, I'll be like gerrymandering.
Yeah. There's a lot of uses of statistics in the world. I think we'd have done a lot better in COVID if people understood more about statistics. So
the data collection is huge. I mean, we've had a lot of Silicon Valley types on the show where the data collection and analyzing data is so important and valuable
in every company now. Yeah, every company. We should be teaching kids to be data literate. They will need it in their lives, whatever they go into. But they also need it, I think, to sort of protect them from what's sent to them on social media and the misinformation they get. And, it helps them if they can interrogate a data visual and say, where does this come from? Who sent it? What data is not included? They will be better protected. So this is something we're really trying to bring to the United States, and every other country in the world has been teaching data for quite a long time. So it's really a US problem that we've only taught algebra and geometry in high school, and shifting it is hard, but it's really important, I think.
Yeah, American, my mom's a teacher 20 plus years, and I've heard teachers talk about this, over in Europe, your guys' end of the woods, you guys kind of figure out early on what people are good at in trades or whatever, and you kind of start steering to them. We try and force everybody to try and see if they're interested in everything, even if they're not. And we're like, we're just going to shove it down your throat and force you to take it as a credit.
Yeah.
And you're probably going to hate it, but we just want to see if you decide you're going to turn into an engineer, I guess.
We do that also in England. I think Germany is one of the places where they decide on pathways early on. But what's different about England is when I was a teacher in London, which was many years ago now, I was, like 20s, and data was a fifth of the curriculum. And we, all the way through school, learn what's called maths. Every year you learn maths, and it has all the maths together combined. So you encounter real problems like they have in the world, and you maybe bring in a bit of geometry or a bit of algebra or a bit of stats. It's not like here where you do a whole year of algebra and then a whole year of geometry and then another year of algebra. That's really a distinctly American phenomenon, and I think it definitely makes the problem worse.
It's probably because we have to charge, $100,000 a year for college now.
Yeah.
That was a game I figured out 40 years ago, whenever I turned 18, almost 40 years, was that there was a game being played, that shit was being forced on us. In fact, I wrote about this in my book. I figured out in high school that I needed 26 credits of passing classes to graduate, but if I took all the classes that they were throwing at me, I would have to take, I think it was like 56 credits that I would have. And my brain went, it was doing math. My brain went, why do I need to take all these other classes? I only need 26 to graduate. I'm a dumb kid who comes from a poor family. I was smart enough to know that. I'm going to have a Pell Grant if I go to college. I'm not going to Harvard or Stanford or any place else. And that's just it. And so I literally went to my teachers and I figured out which classes I had to pass to get into high school. And I literally went to my teachers and said, I'm not going to pass your class. I'm just gonna sleep through it and sit there. And they were quite offended, but they said, you know what? If you're going to be that way about it, I just don't want you in the class, so don't come, and we'll mark you as here. And all my teachers did that with me, because I went and told the other ones, I'm like, this teacher's doing this with me. You should do this with me. And so literally, I was taking half my classes for my senior year, and the rest of the time I was going out to lunch with my friends and other stuff.
Wow.
But I learned what I needed to. And then there were some classes that I really enjoyed because the teacher was so great, but I flunked their class anyway because I really wasn't doing the curriculum, but I enjoyed what the teacher was teaching and how they taught it. It's kind of like the same principle Steve Jobs used, where he flunked out of college, but he still went back to classes that he really enjoyed. And one of them was typesetting or fonts and stuff like that. And I forget the proper term of it, but that's what he used to build the thing. And so you collect. That's what I've always done, because I never did go to college. I collect the data that I want, need, and I utilize it. That, or I find people who can help me.
There's way too much pressure in this country to get to college, to get to the top colleges. Everybody thinks you have to be at Stanford or Harvard, when there are loads and loads of really good colleges kids can go to. Yeah. Or maybe you don't go to college. And now there's lots of things you can do. There are courses you can take without going through colleges to do what you want to do in life. I wish we didn't have that pressure on kids in the US.
We got to get money to pay for colleges and, sell them courses.
Colleges are expensive.
We have an interesting way here. I think somehow America really needs to turn to what other countries do, where the college and education is given away for free.
Yeah.
And there's more opportunity there. I didn't go to college. I need to make this caveat, because anytime I do that, I get kids coming up to me. I'm not going to go to college either. I did order all the all sorts of instruction from Harvard Business Review, which is a great magazine. I don't know if they still do the magazine part, but I would order the Harvard Business Review magazine and also some of their packages that they would have on how to be a CEO, how to build companies, and all that. And then I read just about every business book I could get my hands on.
So you learned a lot.
Yeah, and I focused on what I needed to know, and then if I need to do engineering and business, I just hire somebody to do that.
Yeah, you can totally do that. And these days, now there's stacks of online classes you can take.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to go the college route, and now it's probably a great social learning experience for kids.
Yeah,
I want my kids to go to college so they get that social learning of growing up with these other young people, and learning to function. Yeah. But that you can totally do it without college these days.
Yeah, that's true. The only thing I did miss out of college was the frat parties. Oh!
Yeah. So, you found other ways to have parties, I'm sure.
Is that the way? Yeah, I used to go attend them and break them. So there you go. So this all adds up in my mind. See what I did there?
Yeah, I see that.
Give us your final thoughts as we go out. Tell people where to order up the book and any.com you want people to check out.
Yeah, Mathish is the name of the book, Finding Creativity, Diversity, and Meaning in Mathematics. And it comes out on May 7th, and you can find it in all the bookstores. I have also mathish.org, where you can watch a video of kids ishing in the classroom and see how great it was for them, and also see all the places you can get the book, other things, some fun handouts that I didn't get to put in the book. And then ucubed.org, like U and a cube. Cubed.org is the website where we just have millions of resources for people to teach maths and learn maths better. So yeah, those two places, ucubed.org, Mathish. Oh, and I have a new maths app called Struggly that gives kids this visual creative experience online and encourages them to struggle. That's one of our big messages. It's really good to struggle. That's why we call it Struggly. And you can find that at struggly.com. Those are the places.
There you go. Thank you very much, Joe, for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. I love your book library that you have behind you. We need more.
Yeah, I'm in my Stanford office at the moment. So the books.
There you go. We love books. So thank you very much for coming on the show. Thanks, Ron, for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss. Chris Voss, one of the TikTok and all those crazy places on the internet. We'll see you next time. Be good to each other. Stay safe.